Good evening. It is time for today's Tax Talk. I'm your host. I'm attorney Stephen Leahy, and it is Monday, January 23rd, the year of our Lord 2023. And you know there's a big fight in Congress about the size of the IRS. I think they've already lost, they being the Republicans, but that's what we're going to talk about today. And won't you join us? Well, yep, that's so today it says IRS needs to be completely redone. This is the Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen, former Fed boss, and that's what she reported as saying. Here's the thing. I agree with her. I just don't think we agree on what that means. I think she means it differently than I mean it. When she says she wants it completely redone, she talked about why she doesn't want to leave. She was supposed to. There was reports that she was going to leave her post, but she decided to stay on. Why? Because she wants to spend that $80 billion. She thinks that'll be fun, but it won't be fun for you and me. I'll give you that. So anyway, that's what we're going to talk about today. I have a couple. There's a couple of stories. I think I'll read this. I don't know if I should do the Daily Mail or they're all about the same. Some are longer than others. Maybe I'll use the New York Post since they're the least, probably the least of the tools of our government. So let's go to that. Let's see what this says. Oh. IRS needs to be completely redone, she says. So here it is. U.S. Secretary Treasury's Yellen says IRS needs to be completely redone. Again, I think that she and I have a different idea about what that means. Here's a great picture. She's 74 years old. She wants to stay around. She says, well, it's in the story. So let's read the story. U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen on Sunday said rebuilding the Internal Revenue Service would be one of her top priorities in coming years, putting her squarely at odds with Republicans who have taken control of the House of Representatives. Yellen told Reuters in an interview on her way to Zambia that she was thrilled that Congress had approved $80 billion. Let me ask you as a taxpayer, are you thrilled? Is that something you're looking forward to? That the IRS got $80 billion? Is that a good thing? Do you believe that the government will treat us all equally and well? Just a question. In new funding to help the agency reduce a huge backlog, and this is what they always say, the huge backlog of tax returns, which is true, they do have a huge, and better hunt down $600 billion in unpaid tax bills. This is that tax gap that we always talk about. Now it's $600 billion, it's $300 billion, it's $600 billion, it's $1 trillion per year. It depends what they want to accomplish and what the money, trying to justify, right? So again, even if it was $600 billion, at what cost to the American taxpayer, to our freedom, to all of our freedom? At what cost does it? Again, I always say you could stop all or almost all crimes if you just got rid of the Fourth Amendment. That the police can come into your house whenever they felt like it. We could probably stop most crimes. At what cost? We have to keep asking ourselves that. She said she decided to stay on as Treasury Secretary in large part to oversee implementation of legislation like the Inflation Reduction Act, which included the IRS funding and passed on party lines last year. Because it passed on party lines, why is it such a surprise that the Republicans want to undo it? Yellen lobbied hard for the extra funds to help the IRS deal with what she called massive problems, including a huge backlog. We all know the backlog was created by the IRS employees staying home for 2 years. Nothing to do with funding. There was $14 billion a year, 12 to 14 billion. It was never about funding. It's not about funding now. And lack of personnel to carry out complicated audits of high earners. Again, I think what's happening is the IRS is going to use this money not so much for audits, although that's going to happen, but they're going to audit us electronically with these information returns. They're going to track everything we do, and it's all going to be electronic. They don't even have to bring you in. I mean, that's the dream of Elizabeth Warren, right? That they know exactly every dollar that goes in and out of your bank account, and then they can tax you accordingly. You don't even have to fill out a tax return. They'll tell you what you owe. And it'd be done automatically. It would be done already this year. Congress approved. Okay, I'm excited about the legislation that's passed, and I want to make sure that it makes a difference. It should make. And that includes the IRS, she said. That agency needs to be completely redone, and it's a big task. Again, I don't think by completely redone she means what I think it means. I believe it should be completely redone, but not with $800 or $80 billion more, doubling the size. That's not how you redo it. I want to see that work progress. Maybe it's not the sexiest kind of stuff in the world, but I think if you want to make a difference in the world, you have to have the follow through, she said. So her difference in the world is going to be you and me paying more taxes and the IRS on our throat. That's her difference in the world. And that's a good thing, she thinks. Well, why should you be able to cheat? Even though here's a picture of two cheaters right there. Oh, no, Joe Biden pays every dollar in taxes. We know that. Every dollar that Hunter Biden has given him, he's reported, right? Yellen, 76, conceded that the split Congress reduced the chances of passing legislation to advance Biden's agenda, but said she still enjoys the job. She enjoys me. Her decision to stay ended months of speculation that she would step aside midway through Biden's 4-year term. This is probably the last job I'll ever have. She's 74. Yellen said, I'd much rather be doing this than sitting at home knitting sweaters and whatever it is that one does when one's retired. And yes, I love these things because even the New York Post, they become cheerleaders for those in power. And yes, she did learn how to knit in college and even knit a lovely tennis sweater for her husband, Nobel Prize winning economist. One thing she is not looking forward to, asked about the debate with Congress over raising the debt ceiling, Yellen simply puts her hand to her forehead and sighs. So this is the completely redone. I wanted to mention also, they talked about the $1 million or $1 trillion coin. I think it's in this story, so let's see what we got here. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen said on Sunday that the IRS needs to be completely redone, signaling a start of a long and arduous fight against Republican efforts to gut the taxation. They're not trying to gut the agency. Putting it back at where it was at $12 billion to $14 billion a year is not a gut of the agency. It is now, Attorney Leahy. They got double that money. They don't have the money yet, and it's not a gut of the agency. But yet, this is a journalist, a nonpartisan, non-biased journalist. It comes the same day she told the Wall Street Journal that minting a $1 trillion coin to stop the U.S. from going into financial default would likely be out of the question. I'm going to put this up here because here's my coin, my $1 trillion coin. This is floated every time that there's a problem with the debt ceiling comes in. Oh, well, it's the faith and credit of the United States. You can't go back and not increase the debt. That would be irresponsible. It's not irresponsible to go beyond the debt, to know what your limit is and spend beyond it anyway. That they don't think is beyond that's not a problem. But man, but limiting how much they can spend, that is irresponsible. That's something we can't allow. That's something we got to stop. How dare you? We're not even going to negotiate that, as they've all told us now, Biden and Yellen and all of them. We're not even going to negotiate. That's a non-starter. Congress always approves it Well, maybe they shouldn't always approve it. Maybe they should get something in response for the in reply for the American people who put them in charge to try to cut spending. Is that a way you could cut spending? I know that they talked about it with Donald Trump, but he didn't do it. They talk about it every time, but they don't do it. They just capitulate, go over. They get some little crumbs, but they just keep spending. Now we're at $30 trillion. 30. Let's grasp that for a moment. $30 trillion. Did you know that our debt service is now the size of the military budget? Did you know that? It's out of control. If we raise it, do we just raise it again next year? Well, they raised it 3 times when Trump was in. Do we raise it 3 times when Biden's in then? And 3 times when the next guy's in charge? Or gal, right? Because that's what you have to say now, right? Is that the way it works? We just keep. Why do we have a debt limit? There are those who say we shouldn't have a debt limit. We should be able to spend anything to the moon and back. I think 30 trillion is pretty close to the moon and back. So that's my own opinion. I don't know. What do I know? House Republicans are opposed to raising the debt limit without offsetting the increase with spending cuts elsewhere, a point Senate Democrats and the White House have made clear they will not negotiate on. Why should they negotiate? We love bipartisanship as long as they do exactly what we want. Then that's bipartisanship. And that's what's wrong with the Republicans. They've always done exactly what the Democrats want, and then they call it bipartisanship. See, we get along. Asked about the looming debt debate with Congress by Rutgers, Yellen simply put her hand to her forehead and sighed. The Republicans, they don't want to spend more money. How dare they? Among the GOP's first acts in the House majority this year have been to vote on a bill to repeal the added funds given to the IRS by the Inflation Reduction Act. It likely won't get anywhere in the Senate, but the symbolic legislation is a clear marker that negotiating with the right on internal revenue improvements will be an uphill battle. Not Congress, not the House, the right, the evil right, who don't want to spend more money to help the poor. That's Congress doesn't spend more money. Women and children and people of color hurt the most. That's what That's always the headline. Yellen said on her way to Zambia, that she was thrilled about the last Congress having approved $80 billion in new funding to help the agency reduce a huge backlog of tax returns and better hunt down $60 billion in unpaid tax bills. First, it's mostly, almost all of that money is for enforcement, not for unblocking. They don't need the money to unblock. They just need people to go to work. Again, for 2 years, IRS employees stayed home. That's why there's a backlog. She said she decided to stay on Treasury Secretary in large part to oversee implementation of legislation like the Inflation Reduction Act, which included the IRS funding and passed on party lines last year. In October, Yellen denied unconfirmed reports that she was going to step down and be replaced by Joe Biden after the midterm elections. The Treasury official lobbied hard for extra funding to help the IRS deal with what she called massive problems, including a huge backlog in working through tax returns and lack of personnel to carry out complicated audits of higher-earning taxpayers. I'm excited about legislation that's passed, and I want to make sure that it makes a difference it should make, and that includes the IRS. That agency needs to be completely redone, and it's a big task. Again, I agree, but we disagree on what that means. Here's her coin. There's the coin. I like that coin, but I don't have a copyright to use it. But there it is. But she'll have to juggle that agency overhaul while also navigating the Treasury through the extraordinary measures needed to carry the U.S. economy, as she announced to House Speaker Kevin McCarthy last week. Oh, I got to tell you, if we're worried about Janet Yellen getting us through the financial crisis, we're all in trouble. Mark my words. Yellen wrote a letter to McCarthy on January 19th, warning him that the U.S. was very near its debt limit and that urgent action was needed to avoid risking a massive default that could put the global economy in a tailspin. It's already kind of in a tailspin. And how long have they known that that limit was going to be reached? They've always known, haven't they? Why haven't they fixed it before now? They don't want to fix it. And everybody whoever wants to fix it is irresponsible. The period of time that extraordinary measures may last is subject to considerable uncertainty, including the challenges of forecasting the payments and receipts of the U.S. government months into the future. When have they come up with the budget? Have they come up with the budget? I don't believe so. I respectfully urge Congress to act promptly to protect the full faith and credit of the United States. Speaking to the Journal about one option, minting a $1 trillion coin that would then be deposited at the Federal Reserve and used to pay the country's debts, Yellen guessed such a move would be out of the question for a monetary body. It truly is not by any means to be taken as a given that the Fed would do it. And I think especially since with something that's a gimmick, Yellen said. Do you think it's a gimmick? Well, here's the truth. Of course it's a gimmick. It's just, this is where we are. This is what's going on. We have Janet Yellen trying to come up with some way. They're just going to ignore Congress. Well, here's the good news. They can't ignore Congress. And the better news, maybe they'll fight back now. Wouldn't that be something? Wouldn't that be a change? Well, I hope it happens. So I agree with Janet Yellen that the IRS should be redone. But I disagree with her on what that means. So thanks so much for joining us here tonight. I'm going to ask you to like and subscribe. Like and subscribe. We need your help. So I'm going to ask you to like and subscribe. Who else is giving you this kind of news every day, every night? And I'm going to ask you, if you have an IRS problem, you don't know what to do, go to freeirsbook.com. Get your free copy of my book, Deal with Your IRS Problem Today. Go to freeirsbook.com. Again, get Deal with Your IRS Problem Today. I will pay for the publishing. I'm going to ask you to pay for the shipping and handling. Again, it's under $10. Go to freeirsbook.com. Get your copy. So thanks so much for joining us here today. I appreciate you taking the time. We'll be back here tomorrow for Crypto Tuesday. And have you seen the price of crypto? Well, that's what we're going to talk about tomorrow. So thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you again tomorrow. God bless you. Out.